Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I'm here to bring you my second quarterly wrap-up of 2014. Today I'm going to be discussing with you the books that I read in April, May, and June. If you'd like to see what I read in January, February, and March, please feel free to check out the link below for my first quarterly wrap-up. Also, you are more than welcome to follow me on Goodreads and see what I'm reading at any given time. Unlike my first quarterly wrap-up, I will not be sharing my reading goals progress. I'm hoping to do a completely separate video for my mid-year reading goals updates. Before I get into the 17 books that I read in April, May, and June, a friendly reminder that I have made it a personal goal to do full-length book talks for every book that I read. So if you'd like to know more about any of these books, there will be a book talk on this channel at some point in the future. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. So let's get started. The first book on the list is Then You Were Gone by Lauren Strasnick. This is a young adult novel about a girl whose estranged best friend goes missing. She becomes obsessed with the mystery of her disappearance. I found that this was a very quick read, but the writing was choppy, and I found that the mystery and the plot were kind of cliche, so I was only able to give it 2 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. And the next book I read was If I Stay by Gail Forman. This was a reread for me from 2011 and is one of my favorite young adult books. It tells the story of Mia, who at the very beginning of the novel loses her family in a tragic car accident. She is in a coma and is having an out-of-body experience, looking back on some of her memories and deciding whether or not she should stay or go. While this book lost a little bit of its magic in my reread, I couldn't bring myself to take a star away, so it still has 5 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book I read was Amelia Ann is Dead and Gone by Kat Rosenfield. This is a debut young adult novel from Kat Rosenfield, and it tells the story of a girl who just graduated from high school. She is very ambitious and eager to leave her small town behind. But the day after she graduates, her small town is turned upside down whenever the mysterious young girl's body is found on the outskirts of town. While I found the writing absolutely gorgeous, the pacing was very slow, and I didn't find myself invested in the mystery or the characters, so I was only able to give this book 3 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book that I read was March, Book 1, written by John Lewis, Andrew Aden, and with art by Nate Powell. John Lewis had an influential role in the civil rights movement that took place in the United States. This book covers the first part of his story, beginning in his childhood in rural Alabama and spanning through other life events. Since this is the first volume, it doesn't go through his entire life to the present. I found this book to be very informative and interesting, and the art was absolutely fabulous. But I did think that this book served a better purpose as a piece of informational, sequential art rather than an entertaining read. So I was only able to give it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book that I read was The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. This book I read in one sitting. It tells the story of an independent bookseller who is isolated and bitter, still grieving the loss of his wife. At the very beginning of the novel, he has a very valuable manuscript stolen from his home. Shortly afterwards, he receives a mysterious package in his bookshop that changes his life forever. This is an absolutely charming book about books and about how the love of reading can bring people together. If you're a book lover yourself, I definitely recommend you giving this a try. Like I said, I read this in one day. It's definitely worth a read, and I gave it 5 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book that I read was I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. This tells the story of Ed Kennedy, an underage cabbie driver who has no real ambitions to do anything else with his life. He plays cards with his friends, and he's in love with his best friend and has a charming, big, stinky dog as a roommate. He lives a pretty average life until one day he inadvertently stops a bank robbery. From then on, he starts receiving these mysterious playing cards that have tasks that he is forced to carry out. I absolutely enjoyed going on the adventures with Ed Kennedy to carry out these tasks, and the writing and characters were excellent, just as I would expect from Marcus Zusak. But for some reason, I had a hard time suspending my disbelief for the ending of the book, which I know is a lot of people's favorite aspect, but I still loved this book and highly recommend it and gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next 3 books I read were a part of a trilogy, and it was the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness, which consists of The Knife of Never Letting Go, The Ask and the Answer, and Monsters of Men. The Knife of Never Letting Go was a reread for me from 2012. This is a sci-fi young adult trilogy set on a planet that humans have now inhabited because Earth has become inhabitable and overpopulated. On this planet, we follow Todd Hewitt, who is a member of a small town that consists only of men who can hear each other's thoughts and the thoughts of animals, which is a thing that happens on this planet because of the environment. Todd Hewitt knows very little at the beginning of this novel, but when he stumbles upon a mysterious space of silence, he is forced to question everything that he knows and go on an adventure that changes his life. Of course, I can't go into the rest of the series, but after rereading this book, I upped the original 4 stars to a 5 stars. And after reading books 2 and 3, which were excellent continuations and conclusions of this story, although they were a bit long for my taste and probably could have been condensed, I went on a roller coaster of emotions with this trilogy. I highly recommend it, but I gave these 2 books 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book that I finished was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is a murder mystery novel, but it's not your traditional whodunit. It is more of a whodunit. At the very beginning of the novel, we learn that this group of 5 friends who are young college-level Greek scholars have killed one of their friends. It is slowly unraveled throughout the novel why they did what they did and how it came about. I think the biggest complaint I have about this novel is the pacing, but I feel like it was very intentional. I don't know a lot about Greek literature. I feel like she may have been trying to imitate the Greek tragedy style. The writing in this was absolutely gorgeous, but it was so dense that I can only read small portions at a time, so it took me about 6 weeks to finish this book, but it was totally worth it. But because of the slow pacing, I only gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads, but I do consider this a favorite, and I am very much looking forward to reading the other books written by Donna Tartt, which I have heard are masterpieces. The next book I read, I actually already sent out to a friend, and it was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a very hyped up young adult novel that centers around a rich family known as the Sinclairs, who spend their summer on their privately owned island. Our main character and her cousins and one of their friends have spent every summer there since childhood. But one summer, a mysterious traumatic accident occurs to our main character that she cannot remember and that no one will talk about. So we spend the entire novel slowly figuring out what happened that summer. While I cannot deny the beauty that is E. Lockhart's writing, the overall plot and mystery was pretty cliche, and it kind of left me a little underwhelmed. So I only gave We Were Liars 3 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. But I do think that this book warrants a reread. After reading 2 heavy books, I decided I needed something a little lighter, so I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is a charming young adult contemporary novel about a girl who, in order to cycle through her feelings for boys, writes love letters that she never intends to send. But of course, those letters get sent out and she has to deal with the repercussions of those letters getting out. This book was exactly what I needed. I loved the family dynamic in this book. I also loved how it kind of messed with the traditional high school tropes, and since it was exactly what I needed at the time, I gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book that I read was A.D. New Orleans After the Deluge by Josh Newfield. This is a graphic novel that tells the story of 6 true life stories of people affected by Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans in 2005. While I found this very informative, I feel like it was kind of surface level, and I initially gave it 4 stars out of 5, but after consideration I have lowered it to 3 stars out of 5. The next book I read was a reread, and it was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. On the surface, this is a book about 2 young cancer survivors who meet in a support group and fall in love, but it is a book that is so much more than that, and I absolutely love it. I read it right before the movie came out. Even though I know this novel isn't perfect, it will always be a 5 stars out of 5 for me. The next book I read was Three Souls by Jenny Chang. This is set in China in 1935 and follows our main character, Ye Lin. We begin the novel at her funeral, where she is accompanied by her 3 souls, her Yin soul, her Yang soul, and her Hun soul. They relive some of her memories to discover her biggest life mistakes. This book was absolutely charming, and while it was kind of frustrating to get used to the culture of the time and the patriarchy, it definitely paid off. It was a very good reading experience, and I gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book I read I got out from Interlibrary Loan, and it was The Enchanted by Renee Denfield. This is a magically written story from the perspective of an inmate on death row. We see parts of his life in prison, but we also see other perspectives of those in the prison system, such as a lady who is a death row investigator, a warden, a fallen priest, and a corrupt prison guard. The title of this book perfectly captures the way that the book is written. The writing is absolutely enchanting. But that being said, that enchanting writing left me feeling kind of disconnected from these characters, and although it made the gritty things that happened in it less terrible, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that disconnect. But I definitely enjoyed the reading experience, and it is definitely worth picking up if that sounds interesting to you, and I gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. And the last book that I read in June was Landline by Rainbow Rowell. It tells the story of Georgie McCool and her husband Neil, who have been slowly growing apart. Georgie is a fairly successful sitcom writer who's been given the opportunity of a lifetime, but it involves her working through Christmas break. Her husband and her kids have already made plans to visit his family in the Midwest, so Neil takes the kids and goes out to the Midwest. While they're away, Georgie makes tons of efforts to get in contact with Neil via their cell phones, to no avail. She visits her mother, who has a landline phone that she uses and somehow magically contacts Neil from 15 years ago before they were married. This book has all of the genuine characters and comforting writing that you come to expect with Rainbow Rowell. I know that this book isn't perfect, but something about Rainbow Rowell's writing feels like going home. I know that it's cheesy, but I absolutely adore this book, and it left me with some of the similar feelings that I felt after reading Attachments by Rainbow Rowell, her other adult novel. I would say that if you're a Rainbow Rowell fan, you will not be disappointed, but if you haven't read any Rainbow Rowell yet, I would suggest starting with one of her other books. But I gave Landline by Rainbow Rowell 5 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. And those are the 17 books that I read in April, May, and June. As always, please feel free to share your thoughts on anything that I said in the comments below. Also, if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with my mid-year reading goals update. Bye!